The sun was merciless that day. It hung high above the frontier town like an unblinking eye, pouring down heat without mercy or pause. Dust shimmered in the air, and the ground itself seemed to breathe fire. At the edge of town, where the buildings thinned and the land opened into scorched prairie, a wooden cross stood planted deep in the earth. Bound to it was a young woman. Her wrists were stretched wide, tied tight with rough rope that bit into her skin. Her ankles were pulled apart and secured just as cruelly, leaving her body helpless beneath the open sky. Her clothes had been stripped from her in pieces, torn away in the name of righteousness, until almost nothing remained to shield her from the sun or from the eyes watching her suffer. Her skin burned red beneath the heat. Sweat traced slow paths down her body, and her chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate breaths. Every gasp scraped her throat raw. The heat was agony, but it was not the worst of it. The worst of it was the shame. Dozens of townsfolk stood gathered before her, their faces hard, curious, or smugly satisfied. Some whispered behind their hands. Others folded their arms and watched in silence. A few nodded grimly, as though convincing themselves that what they were witnessing was necessary. This was not justice. It was a spectacle. Standing above them all was the preacher. He held his Bible high, its worn leather cover catching the sunlight. His voice cracked through the dry air like a whip striking flesh. "This girl carries the devil within her," he thundered. "She resisted the hand of the Lord. She rejected his guidance. And now the Lord will cleanse her." He turned and pointed toward the cross, his fingers shaking not with fear, but with excitement. "The sun itself will burn the wicked spirit from her flesh. Her shame will cleanse her soul." A murmur swept through the crowd. Heads nodded. Faces tightened with grim approval. They believed him. They always had. The girl twisted against the ropes, her muscles screaming in protest. Tears streaked down her dust-covered cheeks, but when she spoke, her voice carried a fierce strength that refused to die. "I am no devil," she cried. "He tried to touch me. He tried to shame me. I fought him. Now he calls me a witch." For a heartbeat, her words hung in the air. Then the crowd laughed. Not kindly. Not uncertainly. It was a bitter, mocking sound, sharp and cruel. To them, the preacher's word was sacred. Hers was nothing but lies. Her head fell forward, dark hair sticking to her damp skin. Her heart pounded against her ribs as the preacher began to circle the cross, boots crunching against the dirt. His eyes gleamed with the certainty of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Look upon her, good people," he declared. "This is what becomes of sin. This is how God purges darkness from our land." She strained against the ropes again, every muscle burning, every breath a battle. "Please," she shouted, her throat raw. "Someone listen. This is not God's will. This is his crime." But her words were swallowed by the preacher's booming sermon. The crowd leaned in closer, hungry for righteousness, eager for punishment dressed as faith. The cross creaked beneath her struggling weight. The sun climbed higher, pressing down on her bare shoulders. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and judgment. Her lips cracked. Her strength began to fade. Her spirit was being stripped as cruelly as her clothes had been. And still, no one stepped forward. Not one hand moved to loosen the ropes. The preacher lifted his Bible again. "She will break," he said calmly. "She will beg. And when she does, the demon will leave her." Her eyes flew open. "No," she said, shaking her head violently. "I will not break. I will not surrender. This is not God. This is you." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Silence followed, thin and fragile. Only the wind moved, carrying the sound of her ragged breathing. The preacher's face darkened. His authority had been challenged, and his anger swelled. Then the sun will answer in my place, he spat. She closed her eyes. Every muscle trembled. The ropes cut deeper into her flesh. She was alone, humiliated, yet unbroken. And as the town watched, an unspoken question hovered heavy in the air. Would anyone dare defy the preacher? Or would the sun claim her life while the town stood silent? The crowd believed they were watching the devil burn. The truth was far uglier. It had all begun just an hour earlier. The girl had slipped into the chapel seeking quiet, perhaps a place to pray, perhaps only shade from the relentless heat. The building was empty when she entered, cool and dim compared to the blazing world outside. Then the preacher followed her in. His footsteps echoed against the wooden floor. At first, his voice was soft. Gentle. He asked if she believed. If she trusted him. If she sought guidance. Then his hands went where they had no right to go. She reacted instantly. She shoved him back, fury flashing in her eyes. She shouted. She fought. She clawed at his arm, scratched his wrist, and bit down hard enough to leave a mark. He staggered away, stunned, his face burning with rage and shame. In that moment, his plan changed. He stormed out of the chapel, clutching his Bible like a weapon. Outside, he cried to the townsfolk that the girl was cursed. That the devil had taken hold of her soul. That only punishment beneath God's sun could drive the evil out. They gasped. They listened. They believed. They did not see the scratches on his skin. They did not see the fear behind his eyes. By the time she stepped outside, her arms bruised from his grip, the crowd had already turned. They did not hear her protests. They did not believe her screams. And when she told the truth, they laughed. How could a preacher be guilty? How could a young girl be innocent? So they dragged her to the edge of town, tied her to the cross, and called it holy work. Now, as she burned beneath the sun, the preacher stood tall, but sweat glistened at his temple. His hand twitched where her teeth had left their mark. Someone must have noticed. Someone must have wondered. But fear sealed their mouths. Her voice, hoarse and breaking, rose again. He tried to take me. He failed. Now he calls me the devil. Her words fell heavy, but the crowd refused to catch them. Then, through the heat and dust, came the sound of hooves. They drew closer. Heads turned. Dust rose at the edge of the gathering as a rider appeared. It was not a drifter. It was a man the town knew well. A rancher in his 50s, gray streaks cutting through his beard, shoulders still broad from decades of hard labor. He dismounted slowly, deliberately, the movements of someone who had survived more than one war. Whispers spread. He walked forward, boots crunching against the dirt. His eyes went first to the girl on the cross, trembling, burned, but still defiant. Then he looked at the preacher. "What in God's name are you people doing?" he asked. The preacher lifted his Bible. "This is holy work." The rancher turned to the girl. "Is that true?" "No," she said. "He tried to shame me." Silence. "I have seen real devils," the rancher said finally. "They do not look like this girl." A murmur spread. The preacher shouted, "Silence him." Two men stepped forward. The rancher rested a hand on his revolver. "If this is your justice," he said calmly, "then I stand against it." The gun came out slow, aimed at the ground, but the message was clear. The crowd froze. The preacher raged. "Seize him." The rancher moved fast. One man fell. Another was thrown aside. Then a new voice rang out. "Enough." The sheriff stepped forward. "This ends now." The knife flashed. The ropes fell away. The girl collapsed, caught by the rancher, wrapped in his coat. Voices rose from the crowd. A boy spoke. A seamstress pointed. The deacon spoke truth. The preacher's power cracked. The girl stood straighter. The rancher lifted her onto his horse. As they rode away, the town stood silent, left with its shame. And the lesson lingered like dust in the air. Blind faith is dangerous. But one voice can change everything.